I'm dealing with some low back issues. And so I wanted to record this while I was still feeling them. This is a practice working on stabilizing and strengthening the muscles around the back. So it's backing off of flexibility and focusing more on stabilization and strength. And this is for my low back, and if you're having low back issues, this might be a nice thing. This also might be a nice practice to help strengthen the muscles around your back to help prevent low back injuries. So, with that in mind, if you would like to join the practice, you can come to lying down on your back. I am going to use blocks and straps today because, again, I'm backing off of flexibility and moving into stabilization. So please have 2 blocks and a strap if you have them. Straps are easy to replace. Anything that's fabric that isn't super stretchy can be used as a strap. Blocks are a little bit more challenging, but when you see them, you might be able to find something around the house that works for you. So you can wait until you see the blocks and feel free to use something as a substitute. But again, as you're ready, you can come to lying on your back, knees bent, feet on the ground. I have my feet slightly wider apart, the knees falling in towards each other. If this is a comfortable position for you, you can do that. Or you can have the knees pointing straight up to the ceiling, feet about hip distance width apart. And then here, just feeling the natural curves of the spine. The hips nice and heavy. You might sway them a bit from side to side and just notice how that feels. But eventually letting the hips unwind into a place that feels balanced between the right and the left side. Low back, lifting up a little bit, little arch there, natural curve of the spine, natural arch there. Shoulders nice and heavy, evenly weighted. Spine between the shoulders can relax down. Neck lifting up a little bit, natural arch, natural curve of the spine there. Back of your head, chin in neutral or slightly lifted on the ground. Although also, if head flat on the ground does not work for you, feel free to grab a pillow or something and slide it underneath your head for additional support so you can relax down through the head and neck muscles. So coming to a place where you can relax there. Okay. And hands on low ribs or any place that's comfortable. Let the eyes be soft or closed. And just feel the breath moving through you. The lungs expanding out on the inhales and softening back in on the exhales. As you feel ready, you can lengthen and deepen the breath, balancing out the inhales and the exhales. With every exhale, just feeling the earth underneath you and relaxing into all those points of contact with the ground, feet, hips, shoulders, back of the head, just letting those release. With every inhale, expanding from inside out. So as the lungs inflate, feel your torso becoming larger and grander and just feeling that fullness from inside out. The exhale settling back into the earth, but also settling into the sense of fullness, the sense of self. Breathing here. And just notice how you feel, physically, mentally, emotionally. Honor whatever that is, and feel free to let that inform your practice. So feel free to adjust the poses to work better for you, to do different variations of the postures, to even insert different postures. Even if what I say sounds like a command, even if I say a lot, it's just shorthand. Feel free to adjust the postures, to insert your own poses, to do different variations, to make the practice your own. All I ultimately ask you to do is to stay connected to the flow of the breath and to move a bit with this connection. So breathe. Okay. From here, you can go ahead, if you're not already, have the soles of the feet on the ground, knees pointing up to the ceiling, still feeling these natural curves of the spine, hips, shoulders, back of the head, nice and heavy. And then try not to move your hips so much. Go ahead, lift your right foot up off the ground, moving the right knee in towards the chest. Inhale, lower the right foot back down. And again, try not to move the hips too much. Left leg lifts up, left foot lifts up. Inhale, lower it back down. Exhale, right foot lifts. Inhale, lower back down. Exhale, left foot lifts. Inhale, lower back down. Exhale, right foot lifts, holding here. If it works for you to keep the head and shoulders down and you want to grab the right leg or the knee behind the knee or in front and hug the knee in towards you, again, trying to keep your hips nice and steady and hips balanced between your right and the left side. Also feeling the shoulders and the back of the head anchoring down here as you breathe. Feel free to stay here or perhaps holding onto the belly of the right thigh with your hands. Press the right leg out into your hands, again, keeping the shoulders and back of the head anchoring if possible. And go ahead, inhale and straightening the right leg, only as much as works for you. Exhale and bending the knee. Inhale and straighten the right leg. Exhale and bend the right knee. Inhale and straighten the right leg, holding the right leg straight with your hands anchoring down on the right leg. And by the way, you could also, if your arms feel short, you could also use a strap here, loop a strap around the thigh and press that down, but anchoring down, pressing down with your strap or the hands. When you do that, the right hip might momentarily become a little bit heavier than the left. So rebalance out the hips, press down actively through the left hip too, and just feel the breath moving through you here. And then exhale, go ahead and release this side and second side. So first, feel both hips nice and heavy. Exhale, left foot lifts up, left knee moves in towards the chest. If you want to hug onto that knee, you can. And again, you can feel free to use a strap here, and you can loop the strap if it feels better for you. You can loop the strap around the back of the knee and hug in. Feel free to keep the knee bent, or if you want to, inhale and straightening the leg. Exhale and bend the knee. Inhale and straighten. Exhale and bend. Inhale and straighten the leg. With the leg relatively straight, press down with your hands or your strap, whichever you're using, anchoring down. And again, momentarily that left hip might feel heavier, and then balance out the weight between the right and the left side again. Breathing here. Nice, full, deep breaths. And then exhale, go ahead and lower the left foot down. Arms straight along the sides, palms facing down, fingers pointing towards the toes. We are going to do a really subtle movement here. So what we're going to do here is you're just going to press the shoulders down, lift the spine in between the shoulders up so your chest lifts up a little bit. And then exhale, you're going to release the spine in between the shoulders down. Inhale, shoulders on the back, lift the spine in between the shoulders up a little bit more. You'll see that as the chest lifting up a little bit maybe. Exhale, lower the spine in between the shoulders down. Inhale, press down through the shoulders, lift the spine in between the shoulders up. Breathing here. Notice now your spine is in one big arch. And then exhale, go ahead and release the spine back down, the shoulder between the shoulders, and the spine is now back into the S curves. Breathing here. With your next inhale, go ahead, straighten the left leg along the ground. Left knee and toe points up to the sky. So if straightening the left leg all the way doesn't work for you, you might want to slide something. It can be a pillow or a block underneath that left thigh, because if possible, if it works for you, I want to press you to press your hips down evenly, to press the left heel down evenly, and to press the left thigh down towards the ground or into something. It doesn't have to be the ground, but rooting that thigh into something can feel nice. And now keeping the hips nice and even here, stretch your arms up for the sky, and exhale, press the shoulders down into the ground, shoulders on the back. Inhale, lift the shoulders away from the ground, shoulder blades off the back. Exhale, press the shoulders into the ground, shoulder blades on the back, keeping the shoulder blades on the back. Keep your low ribs engaged, low ribs gently pulling towards the spine. Inhale, stretch the arms up overhead. Exhale, circle the arms wide around and down, keeping the core engaged. Keep anchoring down through that left leg. Inhale, stretch the arms up overhead. Exhale, lower the arms down wide around, so it's like you're doing a quarter of a sphere. Inhale, stretch the arms up overhead, left knee and toe stay facing the sky. Exhale, circle the arms wide around and down. And then from here, you can go ahead and bend that left leg, left foot on the ground, and straighten the right leg. And again, the right leg can be all the way straight if that works for you, anchoring that whole entire leg down into the ground. Or you can slide something underneath that right thigh if straightening the leg all the way doesn't work for you, if straightening the leg just doesn't work for you. And feel free, again, to do a different pose. So you can keep that knee bent if straightening the leg at all doesn't work for you. Right knee and toes facing gently towards the sky. Press evenly through the hips. Press down through the right heel. If it works for you, press your right thigh into something. And then again, inhale, stretch the arms up toward the sky. Exhale, shoulders on the back. And then with your next exhale, lower the arms down and inhale, circle them wide around and up overhead, the opposite direction. Exhale, arms lower down, quarter of a sphere. Inhale, arms circle wide around and up overhead. Both hips nice and heavy. Right thigh, right heel pressing down. Exhale, lower the arms down. Inhale, circle the arms wide around and up overhead. And then go ahead and bend this knee. And you can go ahead and move the block over to the side if you want to from here. Then coming back to the left side, go ahead, perhaps straightening the left leg. And again, block underneath the leg if that works better for you, which it kind of does for me right now. So I'm going to keep that. Left knee and toe pointing up to the sky. And then from here, maybe grabbing the strap. And you might have to soften a little bit, lasso the strap around the ball on the right foot. Right leg, you straighten, but perhaps lower to the ground, so you don't necessarily pull the right leg in right away. Why? Because I want you to balance out the weight between the right and the left side of your hips without your hips tucking under. I want you to press down through the left thigh and the left heel. And then keeping all of this, start to pull the right leg in towards you. Again, trying not to move the hips so much, trying not to tuck the hips under. Breathing here, and if you want to, you can pull down on the strap, again, rooting this right leg deeper into the hip socket as you press down evenly through both hips ultimately. But when you initially pull on the strap, the right hip might feel heavier. Breathe. Nice full deep breaths. Okay. If you want to, you could take both ends of the strap into the right hand, looping the strap around the right hand here. Open the left arm to the left as a counterbalance and keep the left hip and left leg on the ground or pressing into something as you slowly open the right leg to the right. However much works for you. Breathe. And notice when that left hip tries to get light, and maybe lift the leg up a little bit, try to anchor it down more, and then maybe play with opening it again. So you can play here. And sometimes it feels really good if you're in a lot of pain to actually not even go that far, to only go to a place where both hips stay equally heavy on the ground, which is about here for me. But a lot of times in class, we will let you go, or we'll say go until, let is a bad word choice. You can go until both hips are still on the ground, but that left hip might feel a little bit lighter. Breathe. And then inhale, go ahead and come back up to center here, releasing the side. And second side, sliding the block underneath the right leg if you're using it. And again, you don't have to. And you could use a pillow instead of a block. That also feels really nice. I've done that before, underneath the knee or the thigh. But it's just letting you anchor the right leg down into something. So both hips nice and heavy, right thigh anchoring down, right heel anchoring down. And you might have to unanchor to loop the strap around the foot for a moment, and that's fine. But again, not pulling this left leg all the way in at first, letting the left leg be away from you some, so you can feel both hips nice and heavy, that right thigh anchoring down, hips even with each other, right heel anchoring down, and then pulling the left leg in only as much as you can without moving the hips too much for today, because we're cultivating stability, so not moving the hips a whole lot if possible. Being careful that they're not tucking under, and breathing here. Nice full deep breaths. Also, if possible, rooting head and shoulders into something. So if those feel light, again, you can grab a blanket or something and slide them underneath your head and shoulders, and find places or things that you can anchor down into. Breathing wherever you're at. Nice full deep breaths. Okay, both ends of the strap into the left hand. Anchoring again this left shoulder down. Open the right arm to the right, press down to the right shoulder, and then keeping the right hip and right foot on the ground if that works for you. Inhale, opening, or with a few breaths, opening that left leg to the left. Breathing here, nice, full, deep, complete breaths. And then playing, notice where that right hip can stay anchored and heavy. Notice how far the left leg wants to go to the left. Breathe. And then as you're ready, go ahead and come back up to center here. And then as you're ready, releasing this left foot. And then you can press both legs down with the legs straight, or have a block underneath both thighs and anchor the legs down into a block or something here. Feel the hips nice and heavy. Again, low back lifting up a little bit. But even though there's a little arch here, the core is engaged. That settles down. So again, it's not a huge arch. It's just a small arch typically, if that feels good for you. Again, if something doesn't work for you or something else works for you, that overrides anything I say. Shoulders nice and heavy, neck lifting up, back of head nice and heavy. And then from here, if you want to stretch the arms alongside by the ears, full body stretch, breathe. And then go ahead, hug the knees into the chest, coming into a ball, gently rocking a little side to side. Coming back into center from here. And then center here, notice what it feels like when you pull your knees in towards you. Your hips are probably tucking under a little bit versus if you press your knees out into your hands. You might feel more the natural curves of the spine with the knees pressing out into the hands. So again, exhale, pull the knees in towards you. Notice if your hips tuck under. Inhale, press the knees out. And one more time, exhale, pull the knees in towards you. And it is fine for your hips to tuck under some. So again, this isn't a bad thing that your hips tuck under here, but just notice if you press the knees out into your hands, you might be able to untuck your hips and anchor down through the hips. Some people like to do core work with a small tuck under. So again, playing around with works for you. I'm going to stay in natural curves of my spine. And then from here, I'm going to stretch the arms back for the ceiling, shoulders on the back, knees bent. I'm going to engage my core so my back doesn't arch any more than it is. So if my back starts arching more as I move, that's also something to be cautious of. And then with my next inhale, I'm going to reach the right foot towards the ground, left arm back for the wall behind me, exhale and back in. And I can do this with my knee bent, so I can tap, inhale, left foot towards the ground, right arm reaches, inhale back in, or exhale back in. Inhale, right foot, left arm. Exhale and back in. Inhale, left foot, right arm. Exhale, back in, trying not to move my hips too much. Inhale, right leg, left arm. Exhale, back in. Inhale, left leg, right arm. Exhale, back in, hugging the knees into the chest, coming into a ball, gently rocking. Then coming into center here, lowering the soles of the feet down, coming back to the natural curves of the spine. Arms by the sides, palms face down, fingers pointing towards the toes. Inhale, shrug the shoulders up towards the ears. Exhale, wiggle the shoulders underneath you so you feel the shoulders on the back. Lift the spine in between the shoulders up a little bit here. And then maybe pressing down evenly through the feet. Inhale, stretch your knees forward and floating the hips up. Exhale and lower it back down. Inhale, stretching your knees forward, floating the hips up. Exhale and lower back down. Inhale, stretch your knees forward and float the hips up. Exhale, lower the hips back down to a block on its lowest height here. And again, just kind of notice where you like the block. Some people like the block up higher near the top of the sacrum. Some people like the block lower down towards their tailbone. Some people like the block somewhere in between. So that's always an option. The other option, if having a block in the middle of the spine bothers you, you could grab two blocks and make a V shape with them. So none of your spine is on the blocks, that the blocks are literally supporting your butt cheeks. So that's also an option, just again so you know that that's an option and that's available for you. But relaxing down onto the blocks to some degree. This is more of a supportive position as opposed to restorative. In restorative, we would relax completely. In this position, you're relaxing. You're being supported by the blocks, so you are relaxing down some through the hips, but you're still active through the feet, lifting the spine in between the shoulders up, pressing the shoulders down as you breathe here. And then you get some interesting options here. So if you want to, you can play with sliding the left foot forward along the ground. Now, as you do this, as you straighten the left leg, if your low back starts to contract on you, then stop, have a bend in the knee. Only straighten the leg as much as it feels good for the low back here. Nice, full, deep breaths. You can also decide you prefer your foot flexed as opposed to pointed. Breathe. And then go ahead and slide that left foot back in or step the left foot back in. Sliding the right foot forward, breathing here. Nice full deep breath. Hips nice and even, pressing down onto the block. Arms, hands can be wherever's comfortable. Breathing wherever you're at. And then go ahead and slide the right foot back in. If you want to, you can lift the left foot up towards the sky, pointing and flexing the foot. Moving that foot around a bit freely. And then lower that foot back down. Lift your right foot up if you want to. Feel super free to keep your knee bent. It's actually more important for the hips to feel nice and even than to straighten the leg. So if as you straighten the legs, it feels like it's pulling your hips in a weird position. Again, try to feel nice and even, pressing down to the hips. Only straightening the leg as much as feels good for you. And again, you can point and flex that foot if you want to. And move that ankle around a bit freely. Breathe. Okay. Lowering that foot down. If you're super comfortable here and you want to flip block to higher height, you can flip block to higher height. But we are adding something here. So grabbing that strap and moving carefully here. So for stability. If you want to now, you can slide that left foot, left leg straighter along the ground to feel the stretch to the front of the thigh. Again, only as much as feels good for you, but then lifting the right foot up, looping the right foot perhaps with the strap, starting with the right leg out away from you. But again, from here, if you want to, you can use the strap, keeping the shoulders on the ground, to pull the right leg in towards you here. Breathe. Nice, full, deep, complete breaths. Okay, and then exhale, go ahead and release. And second side. So again, being careful, being cautious, and feel free to have the block at the lowest height. You can slide the right foot along the ground. Feel hips nice and even, pressing into the ground. I just caused my calf to cramp. That's why sometimes flex foot feels better, because calves do sometimes cramp here. But hips nice and even, lifting the left leg up. You might have to toss strap. So the first time I use my flexibility, but if you're not that flexible, you might have to do a few strap tosses here and kind of finagle the foot into the strap. But when you're ready, again, anchoring down to the shoulders. So the shoulders are on the back, even if your hands, your arms are lifted up. And you start low, pressing down evenly through the hips, and then you maybe pull this left leg in towards you. Breathing here, wherever here is for you. You could also, again, repeat what we did on the floor. The block, just for me, stretches out the hip flexor muscles a little bit more on the right side, and that is part of what pulls on my back. So again, if this feels good for you, it feels really, really good. If it doesn't, leave it out. You could do the bridge on the block and stay there, lifting legs, but breathing wherever you're at. And then exhale, go ahead and release. Coming back to bridge on block. And again, you could be at lowest height. You could be here. Breathing, or support it shoulder stand with the block. So if you want, you can lift both feet up here. And again, you might keep your knees bent to keep your hips nice and centered and heavy, or you can straighten the legs. And again, if this is a point where you do like a little bit more height, you might even flip block higher. Breathing wherever you're at. And making sure your neck also feels really good here. So I didn't go into it in this video, but a lot of times we tuck chins under for shoulder stands, or our necks are already flat, and so shoulder stand becomes a not so great idea. Now this version of shoulder stand, where your hips aren't directly above the shoulders, tends to affect that a little bit less. But still, if your neck is flat, smushed against the ground, this is probably not the best position for you to be in. If this causes any pain in the neck, this is probably not the best position for you to be in. Keep your feet on the ground if that works for you in the restorative bridge, or the supported, not restorative, the supported bridge position with the block at a lower height, if that feels okay for you. So again, adjusting, because that's already an inversion. Your chest is higher than your head. So that is a perfectly lovely place to stay. Breathing though wherever you're at. And notice I am not turning my head as I talk to you here, because in these positions, really you shouldn't be turning your head. And then go ahead, and if you are up, you can lower the feet back down. Breathing here for a moment. And then go ahead and sliding the block out from underneath your hips. Lower the hips all the way back down. Hands to the tops of the thighs, gently pressing the thighs away from you. You might gently sway the knees a little side to side. Coming back into center with your hips when you feel ready, crossing the right ankle over the left knee. Press the thighs away from you here, breathing, hips nice and heavy. And then feel free to stay here, or if you want to, you can release the hands, lift the left leg up. Notice if your hips start to tuck under here and shift some weight down into your hips. But maybe if you want to, you can hold on to the left thigh with your hands, or even the left shin. You can also, again, use a strap here and loop a strap around the left leg if that works better for you. But breathing wherever you're at. Nice, full, deep breaths. Go ahead and release this side. And second side, crossing the left ankle over. Hands to the thighs, hips nice and heavy. Press the thighs away from you. Feel the breath moving through you. And then from here, if you want to release your hands, hips nice and heavy, lifting the right leg up. Maybe holding on to the right leg with your hands as you breathe. Go ahead and release. Release the leg. Come into a ball, hugging the knees into the chest. Again, your hips might tuck under a little bit here. But notice how your low back feels. Notice what's going on as you rock from side to side. You can roll all the way over onto your side and come up to sitting. Dandasana. Legs forward out in front of you. Knees and toes pointing up to the sky. Hands on either side of the hips. And since you have blocks today, blocks underneath your hands. Feel free to bend your knees if you need to, but untucking your hips and sitting up nice and tall here, lifting that low back up out of the hips. You might even press your hands into the blocks, lift your hips an inch or two off the ground, and just rock the hips a little side to side, letting the hips bring a little bit of traction to the low back, the weight of your hips. And then lower the hips back down, but feel the low back again, just lifting a little bit up out of the hips as you breathe. And then go ahead and release. And from here, we're going to go ahead and make our way to all fours, hands and knees. Hands underneath the shoulders, knees underneath the hips. Soften the shoulder, the upper back, so let the shoulders move towards each other on the back. Keep your core engaged. And then with your next inhale, right leg, left arm, extending out, hips nice and level. Exhale and lower back down. Inhale, left leg and right arm. Exhale, back to all fours. Inhale, right leg, left arm. Exhale, all fours. Inhale, left leg, right arm. Exhale, all fours. Inhale, right leg, left arm. Holding here, feel the core engaged, stretching back to the right foot forward to the left hand. Breathe. Lower the left hand down when you're ready. Right leg straight, toes curled under. Lower that foot down. Notice where your hips are in space. Feel free to stay in this version of plank with the left knee on the ground, or if you want to, without changing anything else too much, lift the left foot up too. Breathe. And then exhale, lower back to all fours. As you're ready, left leg, right arm. Breathing here, nice, full, deep, complete breaths. And then as you're ready, lower the right hand down, the left leg straight, lower the left leg down. And again, feel free to stay in this version of plank, or without changing anything else, right leg lifts up too. Breathe. And then from here, if it works for you, lift the hips up, stretch the hips back, downward facing dog, without trying to move the hands and feet too much in towards each other. And just pressing those hips up, back away from you. You might need to bend the knees a little bit and tilt your tailbone just a bit towards the sky, but be careful not to overarch the low back. But you're also trying not to let the hips tuck under. And then maybe straightening the legs again, but keeping that length in the low back. Maybe lower the heels towards the ground. It's fine if the heels never come down. Breathing wherever you're at. And then looking forward at the hands, bend the knees, walk your feet towards the hands or the hands towards the feet. And since I am using blocks to limit flexibility, you can go ahead and grab blocks and bring blocks at highest height near the front of the mat. And this will bring me more into an extended spine position as opposed to a position where my back is rounding, which is what I'm looking for. So if your back is rounding here, maybe bend your knees a little bit. Feel the thighs and the hips lengthening back. Feel the armpits and the chest stretching forward. Feel the breath moving through you here. And then from here, shifting the weight more into the back of your foot towards your heels, hands to the hips, nice long spine all the way up to standing. Feel the breath moving through you here. Exhale, release the hands to the sides. Inhale, arms come wide and reach up high. Exhale, lower the arms back to the sides. Inhale, arms come wide and reach up high. Exhale with a nice long spine, fold forward, and we're not going to let the back round too much today. We're just going to bring the hands to the blocks, and inhale, find even more space, and then on our exhales, you'll soften the upper back, flow the arm bones into the shoulder socket, shoulder blades on the back a little bit more. And then with your next inhale, you can go ahead and step the right foot between the blocks and slide, and we'll scoot that left foot back. However much works for you. Your back heel can be up or down, but for most people, it's easier to keep the hips even if the back heel is lifted. So that's what I'm going to do since I'm having back issues today. So back heel for me is going to stay lifted, but if you prefer it down, that is fine as well. Right knee approximately on top of the ankle, tracking towards second toes. And then from here, I'm going to slowly try to keep steady through the legs, bring my hands to the hips, and try to make sure my hips are relatively even. And then I'm going to lengthen my spine and try to tilt my hips only as upright as works for me from here. So only coming as upright from the hips as feels good. Press down through the hips into the feet. And then if I want to, arms by the ears. Warrior 1, Virabhadrasana 1, or crescent lunge, depending on various naming conventions. And then exhale, go ahead and lower hands back down, press down to that right foot. Step the left foot forward. You can step the right foot back a little bit. And second side. So left foot between the blocks, right foot back, blocks underneath approximately the shoulders. Right foot goes back only as much as feels good for you. And then press down through both feet, hug into your hips. And if you feel nice and steady through the legs, you can make one hand up to your hip and then the other, trying to even out the hips. Lengthen the spine out of the hips and keeping the hips relatively even, starting to tilt the hips more upright. And they might not come all the way upright, and that is fine. You're moving slowly with the breath, so you're staying breathing. You're not trying to do the movement in one breath. You're just trying to stay with your breath as you move. Breathe. And then wherever you end up, arms can come by the ears. Nice, full, deep, complete breaths. And then go ahead and lower the hands back down. If it works for you, flip blocks to medium height and step back into a plank pose here. So feel super free to have the knees on the ground or lift it. But here, feel the core engaged, but try not to tuck your hips under unless that feels good for you. Some people, again, do tuck hips under a little bit in plank. Shoulders on the back, head and neck in line with the rest of the spine. From here, we're going to inhale and lift the hips up a little bit, like we're going to upward facing dog. And then exhale, we're going to keep the core engaged, but move the hips down forward a little bit, shoulders on the back a little bit. Inhale and lifting the hips up a little bit. Exhale, move the hips down forward a little bit, but roll the shoulders onto the back. Inhale, hips lift up a little bit. Exhale, hips down forward a little bit, shoulders on the back. Then come back to a neutral hip position, lower the knees down, and come back into a child's pose. Breathe. Feel the breath moving through you here. As you feel ready, ease your way forward onto your belly. Press down through your hips, point your toes if that works for you, although you can do toes curled under with your feet on the ground, perhaps stretching actively back through the legs. Arms straight along by the sides, palms can be face up or down. And again, staying anchoring down through the hips, bounce between the right and the left side. With your next inhale, lift up through the shoulders and the chest. Exhale and lower back down. Inhale and lifting up. Exhale and lower back down. Inhale and lift up. Hold the lift here. If you want to, you can flip your hands forward. Act like you're dragging your hands back, chest forward, and maybe use your arms and lift up just a little bit higher, but still feel the shoulders on the back, chest leading the way, breath flowing through you. And then exhale or all the way back down. With your next inhale, press up to all fours. And then exhale, downward facing dog, bending and straightening the legs, moving the hips from side to side. Okay, back to all fours. And then from here, go ahead, grab blocks again. And come on blocks again to a downward facing dog. So when you're ready, hips lift up and stretch back. And I have the blocks again on medium height. Breathing here. And then inhale, shoulders forward over the wrist, plank pose. And again, staying really honest, keep the core engaged, shoulders on the back, but knees can be down. With your elbows close to your torso, exhale and bend your elbows just an inch or two. Inhale and straighten. And just make sure you're not moving your hips down and forward here. So now you're keeping your hips nice and even and lifted. Exhale and bend. Inhale and straighten. Exhale and bend. Inhale and straighten. And then go ahead and lower the knees down and come back into a child's pose. Breathe. Come forward onto your belly. Propping yourself up on your elbows, elbows underneath the shoulders if that works for you. Knees outer hip distance width apart. Knees outer hip distance width apart. Pressing down through your hips strongly here. So strongly that when you exhale and bend your knees, the low back does not contract on you. And inhale and straighten. Now if it feels better to be lower through the upper body, feel free to lower down. Shoulders on the back if you're lifted though. Exhale and bending the knees. Inhale and straighten. Exhale and bend the knees. You can hold here, pressing down through the forearms, feeling the chest pulling forward through the shoulders. Feel free to stay here. Or if you want to, you can lower back down, arms along the sides, lifting up when you feel ready through the shoulders, maybe reaching back for one or both feet, maybe kicking your feet back into your hands. Breathe. Nice, full, deep, complete breaths. And exhale, go ahead and release and come back into a child's pose. And then go ahead and come back up to sitting. Dandasana. Legs forward out in front of you, knees and toes pointing up to the sky. Hands could be on the blocks. Sitting up nice and tall, lifting the spine out of the hips here. And then if you want to from here, you can release this, and instead you can use the strap and loop the strap around the balls of your feet, pulling back on the strap and using that to sit up nice and tall. And again, if you have back issues, feel super free to stay here. Also, if your hips tend to tuck under while you're sitting on the ground, it would be a lovely time to grab a blanket or a pillow. So pillows work really well if you don't have blankets. And to sit on a little bit of height here. But using the strap and using that to untuck your hips and sitting up nice and tall. And if it does work for you, you can bend your elbows out to the side and pull the chest forward between the shoulders a little bit, breathing. And then you might have to loop more strap around your hands as you move. Breathe. If I am on something like sitting on a pillow or a blanket, the other thing I want to watch out for is bending my knees backwards. So I'm really actively pressing down through my heels here to keep a little bend in my knees. Breathing. And then coming back up as you feel ready, releasing, and just easing your way all the way down onto your back. So coming down onto your back. Again, you can hug the knees into the chest. Coming back into center here. And then with either the left leg bent or straight, one more time, looping the strap around the right foot. And again, left leg bent or straight. The left leg is straight, again, trying to anchor it down. If it's bent, just trying to feel even through the hips and the left foot. And then as you're ready, hugging that right leg in towards you. Keeping both hips nice and heavy on the ground. Trying not to tuck your hips under too much here. You can loop the strap around the both ends of the you can loop both ends of the strap around your right hand. Open the left arm to the left. And then again, keeping the left hip on the ground, right leg goes to the right, but only as much as works for you, that the left hip feels heavy on the ground. Breathe. And then go ahead and come back up. Take both ends of the strap in the left hand, right arm opens to the right. With your both hips on the ground initially, just see how it feels to cross the right leg over the left. And then if you want to, you can lift the right hip up, keeping the right shoulder on the ground and coming into a deeper twist. Again, breathing wherever works for you. And you can keep your head towards the sky where I'm twisting my neck to the right. And then inhale back to center. You might have to settle the hips back into center. They might have moved after the twist. And then pressing the foot into the strap, lower the foot down. Second side. Left foot into the strap, right foot out. Hips nice and heavy. Again, this right knee can stay bent this whole time. But if you want to from here, left leg hugs in. Try not to tuck your hips under too much. Trying to keep the hips nice and neutral. Left hand holds on to the strap. Right arm to the right. Both hips nice and heavy. Left leg can go to the left. Breathe. And then inhale back to center. Both ends of the strap into the right hand. Left arm opening to the left. With both hips on the ground initially, crossing perhaps this left leg over the right. Breathing here. Nice full deep breaths. And then if you want to, you can lift the left hip up. Trying to keep the left shoulder down. And coming into a twist. And then as you feel ready, go ahead and coming back into center. I'm going to use the strap for this just in case you haven't seen this variation. So from here, you can, when you feel ready, hug the knees into the chest, coming into a ball. And you can use a strap for this too. hugging the shins in. And then if you want to from here, you can take the strap around the balls of your feet here, flip your feet up towards the ceiling, open the knees wider apart, and pull the knees down with your weight in your hips, the spine more extended. So this is another variation of happy baby pose, and you get to press your feet up into the strap in this version, which if you haven't seen this version can feel nice. If you don't want to do this version, you can hold on to the back of your knees with your hands, the lower legs with your hands or your feet. Eventually coming back into center here and full body stretch. And then you can come into final relaxation. So if Shavasana works for you, Shavasana, arms by the sides in airplane position, legs opening wider apart than the hips, back of your hips lengthening towards your feet, relaxing here. But if this isn't comfortable for you, any position, the spine is neutral and relatively supported. So feel free to do knees bent again like we did at the beginning of class. Feel free to do feet together, knees apart, maybe with some blocks supporting your legs if you decide to hang out here. Feel free to do, much like the beginning of class again, knees together, feet apart. You can also lie on your side. Again, if you're lying on your side, you might want to block in between your thighs just to keep the sacrum nice and level or to help keep it level. None of these things work 100%, so keep that in mind. But you can also, if it's super comfortable for you, do sitting. But I recommend staying someplace neutral for 5 to 10 minutes, partially just to let the spine settle in neutral, honestly, after moving so much, but partially also so you have a little bit of meditation, contemplation time. So both are important. However, I'm going to end the video here. So I'm just going to finish with an Om. Thank you for coming. I hope this was helpful for you.